Kempire is brought to you by. Do you know how important it is to rate and review a podcast? Rate and review the Kempire podcast today. 5 stars. Let us know what you love about the podcast. Rate and review the Kempire podcast on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Did you know that you can watch the Kempire channel on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter? Follow us on all of our platforms. More information on our YouTube, our Blue Sky, our Twitter, aka X, and more socials, and every way that you can support us will be available in the episode notes. You're listening to Kempire here on the Kempire Radio Network. Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your number one source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, be sure to share this video, and shout out to our replay crew, because this was not supposed to be a live that was happening tonight, but of course, when the news calls, when we have breaking news, it's important for us to cover it. As you know, earlier today, we were live for the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills reunion recap, which you saw a different side. I will be a little bit more tame. However, a lot of people are calling out Bravo for why do we continue to see this type of behavior on your program? As you know, it was just maybe like a year, almost 2 years ago, that Bethany Frankel started the reality TV reckoning. Since then, we haven't really heard a lot. What we did hear from Bravo is that they made some changes to their policies and procedures, and they sent those policy and procedure updates to their production companies that they work with. So as you know, Real Housewives is produced all the different reality shows on Bravo are produced by different production companies like RHOA and RHOP, and Real Housewives of Dubai are produced by Truly Original. Evolution produces The OC and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So earlier today, maybe just like a couple of hours ago, I was tagged in a video that was done by Patrick McDonald, who is a former producer. But he was recently a producer during Scandival. He was a producer on RHOA. Not their last season, but the season before that. He worked with Real Housewives of Potomac, and he's worked on The OC, and he was a producer on the St. Lucia trip. So this is very, very recent. So Patrick is now calling out Bravo in regards to them firing him. Well, not firing him, not working with him, ghosting him, because he now is doing OF content. All right. So we're going to get to that because he's also talking about Garcelle's departure and some of the vitriol that he's seeing online that Garcelle is dealing with. He's also talking about some corrective actions that he believes that needs to happen because, yes, the reality TV reckoning talked a lot about the talent and the abuses the talent allegedly went through as being a part of this reality show. He's talking about what production, what the crew, what cameramen are dealing with behind the scenes. So before we get to that, we're just going to give you a couple of updates in regards to other things in reality TV news. You know, we've talked recently about the Bravo ratings and Bravo trying to counteract the narrative that RHOA is doing very well, even though we've seen a series decline in their demo. Demo is important, 18 to 49. That is the advertising demo. That is a sweet spot for advertisers. Okay. So our friends over at TVD to report today that Real Housewives of Atlanta's latest episode, the 4th episode, I actually thought that they would see a bump. Unfortunately, we're not seeing a bump. We are seeing another decline. And according to TVD, this is a new series low in viewers. And I will always put out the disclaimer, Bravo's not just looking at live viewers. They're looking at the 3-day totals. They're looking at streaming. And, you know, they came out last week saying, we saw a record number for the premiere on streaming, something that we can't verify. Okay. So according to TV Deets, this week's episode, the 4th episode of the 16th season of RHOA, we had a 0.12 demo. Isn't that lower than last week? I have to double check. But their views for this week are 560,000 views for Sunday night's episode. Married to Medicine actually got higher. And at first I was like, okay, they probably got a little bit higher. Okay. Well, no, Married to Medicine's episode, part 2 of their reunion, was about 36,000. Wait, let me make sure I'm doing my math right. Hold on. RHOA was 560. They were 36,000 more viewers. And mind you, Married to Medicine comes on after RHOA. So Married to Medicine had higher viewers than RHOA this week. Eesh. Okay. The other rating, since we talked about Real Housewives of Beverly Hills earlier today, Beverly Hills, though, saw a high because a lot of people were saying, Beverly Hills ratings are low too. Well, not really. Yes, their ratings are lower than what they're used to, but again, streaming. But their part one of their reunion saw almost 1 million viewers, 971,000 live viewers. This is a season high in viewers for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills with a 0.20 demo. All right. So I wanted to give you the update in regards to that. All right. I just wanted to verify some information because, I'm a journalist. Look, because, I'm a journalist. I was trying to verify some information in regards to this story. All right. So we will get it. And I will be dropping the call and link for our members first for those that want to weigh in on what I'm about to show you. So Patrick McDonald, who, if you recall, especially if you watch Logo in like the early years and things like that, he was a reality TV star turned producer. So he's now claiming in a new video that he posted on X that he has been ghosted by Bravo, the production companies that he's worked with, and he's worked with Truly Original. He's worked with Evolution. He was on the St. Lucia trip in Beverly Hills. Okay, so he's claiming because he started doing OF content. For those that don't know what that is, someone in the live chat say it because again, we're on YouTube. I don't know what YouTube is going to censor, okay? So he decided to get into OF content. He's going to talk more about that. I'm going to play the video for you. And he believes because of that, they've stopped working with him. I thought it was just that. Some people might say this is just a disgruntled employee. He's upset they stopped working with him. Some people might say, oh, I understand why they stopped working with him. Okay. Moonlight, I'm going to highlight your comment so people know what OF is. Okay. All right. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. And I feel sorry for you when you Google it if you're that innocent. Okay. Of course, Joe knows. So I'm playing Joe. I play it. Am I? All right. So he's not only talking about them ghosting him, though, in this video, he's exposing alleged abuses behind the scenes of production. I mean, of course, I have more questions, but this might be a part one of what we're talking about here. Okay. All right. Let me get into this video because it is late here in New York City already. It's almost 9 p.m. Eastern. Okay. But I do know you guys are going to want to weigh in on what he says. Okay. So let me play this video for you for Patrick McDonald. So as I said to you before, he is a now former producer of shows that he's worked on: Vanderpump Rules, RHOP, RHOA, RHOBH, RHOC. He's worked on Married to Medicine. He's worked on, and he's worked with them for several years. And he truly believes that they've stopped working with him because of his OF content. All right. Let me play this for you.
What's up, y'all? My name is Patrick McDonald, and for the last 5 years, I've been producing reality shows for Bravo. Most recently, I was serving as the supervising producer on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Orange County, and Vanderpump Rules. That is until recently when I was iced out and essentially blackballed by all my shows after I started creating adult content on subscription fan sites. Now, why would I start creating adult content? Well, I was extremely burnt out, overworked, and exhausted by the toxic work culture on a lot of the shows that I worked on. I produced 13 seasons of Bravo across 9 different shows. I'm acutely aware of the inner workings and the work culture across the board at the network. Most of these shows, you're working 12 plus hour days, 6 days a week, 3 to 4 months at a time, and then I would look at these people in my life who are content creators, and they're working far less than me, making a lot more money than me, doing whatever they want, whenever they want, and living a life of freedom. By contrast, I started to look at how much of my life I was devoting to work, and it made me really start to question what I was doing with my life. Now, I'm not an idiot. I knew there was a chance when I started making adult content that it could jeopardize my work with Bravo. But on the other hand, it's 2025. There's Real Housewives and other Bravo reality stars with fan sites. So someone that's a face of the network can create a fan site. Certainly it shouldn't be a problem for someone who works behind the scenes, right? We're seeing guests on Watch What Happened Live being corrected when they use the word hooker and told to say sex worker. We're having adult entertainers bartending in the clubhouse. So I thought, maybe it wouldn't be an issue. Maybe then I could kind of pick and choose which shows I take, evening out my work-life balance a little bit and supplementing my income with the fan sites. I'm not sure if me being iced out was done at a network.
First of all, the fact that he felt the need to supplement his income, and he's seeing, and look, I'm sure a lot of people are seeing that too. They're like, damn, I could be making more doing this. Already tells you, first of all, the amount of work and the amount of hours these producers work. He talks more about some of what he's been paid over the years in this video as well.
Level or at a production company level, but all I know is that once I started creating this content, things went radio silent with the executive teams on my shows. I haven't heard from the exec team on Beverly Hills since we left St. Lucia, and I haven't heard from the OC exec team since we shot the last reunion, where it became abundantly clear to me that word had gotten out about my fan sites. Once I realized I was being iced out, even though I knew it was a possibility, it still hurt my feelings, to be perfectly honest. For the last 5 years, I've given so much of myself to these shows, pouring my energy, heart, and soul to telling these compelling stories, all while enduring incredibly intense pressure from a lot of my bosses. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone more passionate about their job at Bravo than me. I have loved Bravo and been enamored by Real Housewives ever since I saw Sheree shifting Kim Zolciak's wig out in front of Jimmy John's on Atlanta back in the day. I love these shows. I loved them then, and I love them to this day. And I love them because I know how much they mean to people, because I know how much they meant to me. I was proud and honored to work on these shows, and as it turned out, I was really good at it. I came into the Bravo world in a bit of an unconventional way. Several years ago, I myself was on a reality show much like these shows called Fire Island. And I was on that show during one of the darkest periods of my life. I was battling a serious drug addiction at the time that I was keeping a secret during production. So I know what it's like to be on one of these shows while your life is crumbling around you and you're trying to just keep it together. It's a really unique position to be in, and one that's very hard to understand until you go through it yourself. Shortly after Fire Island wrapped, I was a homeless junkie, shooting up 3 to 4 times a day and was sleeping under bridges, But then I went to rehab. I got clean and I started to rebuild my life. I'd been sober for about a year and a half, working 2 jobs, one at a grocery store and one cutting down trees, when I got my first offer to work on a Bravo show. I was so beyond grateful for that job because I honestly thought I'd never work in TV again. So I took it and I ran with it and gave it everything I had. I started out as a logger on Married to Medicine, and I quickly climbed the ladder from there. My next show, I got a promotion. Next show, I got a promotion. By my 4th show, I was promoted to field producer, and I was running a crew on Real Housewives of Atlanta. Within the next 2 years, I was promoted to supervising producer, working directly under the co-executive producers. And, for the first time in my life, I really knew I was great at something. And that was consistently affirmed by my supervisors and the cast members that I produced. Most of the showrunners would tell me that I was one of the best field producers they'd ever worked with. Cast members who were notoriously challenging for producers in the past, requesting that I produce their scenes. I was in my element. I was killing it. I was really freaking proud of myself. For the first couple years, I think I was blinded to the toxic culture on a lot of these shows by my excitement to be there. But after a while, I started to step back and question the way these shows were being run. I could see how overworked and stressed out a lot of my colleagues were. And I would look at a lot of the gay men who were showrunners on this show and try to picture my life if I was in their position. And honestly, most of them seemed unhappy, lonely, and some of them quite miserable. Is this really what I want out of my life? Is this the trajectory I want to continue down? So time went on, and my passion for the genre started to wane as a result by how poorly cast and crew were treated at times. And for someone who loves Housewives as much as I do, I was quite shocked by how disenchanted I became. I also developed a bit of a moral dilemma on a recent season when a cast member's sexuality was at the center of a storyline. Now, I found the internal conversations about this person and what they were going through to be extremely insensitive, problematic.
Pause. Is he about to talk about Kyle? Because that's the only thing that's in the front of my mind right now, because we were just talking about earlier today when people were saying that, are they, was Garcelle, exposing Kyle's sexuality. So I wonder if he's referring to this particular person. You guys will remind me in the live chat or in the replay, well, no, there was this other person too. But there was also Bronwyn from the OC. I didn't watch those years. So you guys weigh in to give context. The only one that's in the front of my mind right now is Kyle.
And quite frankly, gross. Person's coming out journey, if they have one, is entirely their own. Full stop. Now, let me be clear. I'm not talking about friends of this person who are also on the show who would naturally be inquisitive and ask questions about someone's life and who they're dating. I'm talking about the entity of a TV show, digging into someone's sexuality in a way that's salacious and sensationalized. That's what the internal dialogue felt like to me. Producers encouraging other cast members to ask direct questions that would put this person's sexuality on the spot just felt really invasive to me and crossed the line that I wasn't really comfortable with. I would see people at the executive level who have worked with this cast member for years, seemingly very close, talk to this cast member.
Pause. Some people are saying also Denise Richards, because you remember what happened with Denise before she ended up leaving Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Sidebar, Denise show is not doing too bad either. I saw that her ratings were like 400 something thousand this week for her latest episode. Lynn says that Bronwyn didn't try to hide it. Okay, well, note to self. I wasn't sure. I just remember she was one of the housewives that came out.
In a seemingly compassionate way. And then when the cast member would walk away, they completely changed their tune and spoke of this person and what they were going through with such a lack of empathy and respect, even going so far as to using a gay slur, that it was truly shocking. I thought to myself, if this is how they treat this person, someone who has bled out for this show and this network in ways that most people will never know.
So that part made me think it was Kyle, because when you think about it, I know we say that Kyle doesn't share enough, but she really has over the years shared a lot in regards to sharing her family and all of that. So that particular part, when he mentions that, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's Kyle he's referring to. When you talk about the years of work of being on the show, Denise hasn't been on there on the network that long.
This is how they talk about them. They are never going to have my back. And it turns out I was right. The circumstances around that storyline were a major contributing factor to me realizing that it was time to make a change. I also want to quickly touch on Garcelle announcing her departure from the show, because I've seen some wildly negative things said about her online. I could go on for days about what a pleasure Garcelle was to work with. But if you really want to measure the character of a real housewife, ask the crew members who they like to shoot with the most. You can learn a lot about a person by the way they treat the people that they think can do nothing for them. Any morning when the crew found out that we were spending the day with Garcelle, they were ecstatic. And they most definitely do not feel that way about all of the ladies on the show. And I'm so proud of Garcelle for prioritizing her life over a television show. You know, I've found many parallels between producing reality TV and producing adult content. They both offer a voyeuristic view into some of the most vulnerable and mostly unseen moments in people's lives. But I have to say that I've found adult entertainment to be far less invasive than reality TV. It's interesting because most of Bravo's shows and Housewives are centered around conflict. People hurting one another and then making up and then hurting one another again. And society deems that as perfectly acceptable. But God forbid you produce content about people pleasuring each other, making one another feel good. How scandalous, right? When it's more palatable for mainstream society to watch people hurt one another than it is to pleasure one another, it's no wonder the world's in the state that it's in. For me, my life has become much more balanced, more fulfilling, and far less toxic since I started working in adult entertainment. For so much of my life, I made decisions based upon what other people will think. What will my family think? What will my coworkers think? What will society think? Other people's opinions often shape so much of our decision making. And honestly, adult entertainment has been something I've been interested in doing for a long time, but I was too scared to do because of the fear of what other people might think. Man, you've got one life to live and it's yours alone. And I've been having such a blast making this content for the past few months. I mean, working with the housewives can be fun at times, but traveling the world to film with some of the most beautiful men on the planet is also a pretty top tier job, if you ask me. But while I am extremely proud of a lot of the work I've done with Bravo, I am just as proud of the work that I'm doing now. And let me say this, sex work is real, legitimate work, and it has been since the dawn of humanity. Shout out to all the sex workers out there who have been discriminated against, unfairly judged, or cast aside because of what they choose to do with their own bodies. Those have been villainized by many of the same people who consume the product and services that they provide. So I thank those who have endlessly battled the stigma and demanded a seat at the table, all while building an industry so massive and so profitable that it made it a safe enough space for real housewives like Denise Richards and Larsa Pippen to start creating adult content on fan sites. It occurred to me that maybe Bravo isn't even aware of some of the volatile working conditions that these producers and crew are subjected to, especially on these cast trips. On my first international cast trip, I found myself in hand-to-hand combat with a real housewife. There I was in my Lady Gaga t-shirt, making $1,000 a week as an associate producer, freaking like Simba and Scar with this housewife, trying to stop her from physically assaulting another cast member with a metal pole. Needless to say, these
Pause. 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 Who do you think that was? I need details. Like, who was that housewife? Please understand, there's so much that Bravo does not put on air that protects a lot of these women. And I think that's probably what makes them. It's, oh, damn, when I think about it, it's almost like the whole ditty of it all. It, it's sort of like information that they have over you. You know what I mean? Like there's video footage of you doing things that they could expose later on if they wanted to, because they sign off on all of this. I just thought about that. Miss Brooklyn Diamond says Jersey. I mean, it's very possible. I could see Jersey. I could see a bunch of different people. But there's also a lot of housewives that you think are one way. But if you really get to know them, or if you hear tea about a lot of them, please understand, they're not the people you think that they are. Not all of them. Some are. Most of them. Well, I don't know about most of them. Some are, and then some that are not.
Those are stressful enough without the added pressure of an egomaniacal showrunner with incredibly unrealistic expectation. Oftentimes, the co-executive producers are left doing damage control for all the things the showrunners screw up, while also being the only ones who actually get anything done. I've always been a firm believer in trying to leave a place better than you found it. So here are a few things that I think need to change at Bravo, and just a few things that maybe need to be brought to their attention.
And I like the fact that he actually is giving corrective actions in this. And I did end up sending him a DM to ask some follow-up questions just to get some sort of context. And for those that are just joining us, where Patrick McDonald is a now former producer, Bravo reality TV producer. He's worked on RHOP, RHOA. He's worked on Vanderpump Rules. He was a supervising producer during Scandival. So this just should let you know that he was there producing high quality content for them for a long time. So he believes that they've ghosted him and stopped hiring him because of his OF content. All right. And he says I believe I can read this message, hopefully, because basically saying it in the DM, in the video. He says, they completely ghosted me in the 5 years I worked on these shows. I was never not asked back to a show, meaning any of the shows I worked on, I was asked to return the next season. That is until this past season of RHOC, which was right around the time I started my OF. He says, I wasn't asked to do the reunion for Beverly Hills. Mind you, he produced a part of this season of Beverly Hills, but he was not asked to come and produce the new season, the final part of the season. He says, I also was not asked back to do the reunion for Beverly Hills, which is the first time that has happened as well. All right. So then there's that. Again, just as a disclaimer, we don't know what could have happened. For all we know, there could have been other maybe issues, but he's saying that he believes his side of things. He believes they stopped working with him because of his OF. All right.
Stop overworking your producers to the point of complete exhaustion. The amount of pressure and the expectations put on producers and crews on these cast strips are truly insane. You see, these shows aren't unionized, so there aren't protections in place to ensure that employees aren't being mistreated and overworked. Now, some shows do these trips correctly. Vanderpump Rules, for example, staggers their crews and their producers to ensure that everyone is given adequate rest. That's a testament to the showrunner and the production management on that show, the seasons that I was on it, because they actually cared about the well-being for the cast and crew. And that was reflected in the vibe of that crew. People loved working on that show because of great leadership. Winter House was another example of an executive producer who made sure that producers and crew were staggered. And that, too, was one of the happiest crews I worked for on my time at Bravo. On the other hand, you have showrunners that run these trips like tyrants. They expect every producer to be at the cast rooms at 8 a.m., and they will keep every producer on working until like 2 a.m. Now, if you were a general in the Army, would you send every one of your soldiers to the battlefield at the same time? Of course not. Send them in waves to ensure the longevity and endurance of your army as a whole. Same thing applies here. Why would you overexert every single producer on your team unnecessarily when you could stagger them and keep everyone rested and on point for the entire battle? These trips are a battle. On a recent cast trip, myself and a group of crew members traveled 22 hours to an international location. Now, a travel day is a work day. You aren't resting, you're taking flights, you're changing planes, you're receiving gear, you're working.
So these are important details because for me, because I'm always dissecting things. I'm like, well, this is his side in regards to it, because also in some people's contracts and code of conduct, there are certain things that will get employers or give them coverage in regards to, you can't be doing this while working for our particular company. Some people's contracts have more morality clauses that would cover them in regards to this. However, it's these details where he's talking about the abuses of the alleged abuses of mostly crew that he's talking about. We've talked so much about the talent of it all. We haven't really talked about the crew and what they are dealing with behind the scenes, allegedly.
And God forbid you are traveling with the cast. Try being the only producer traveling with 7 housewives on an international flight. God love them, but you are not resting. It's a lot. So we arrive at the hotel after having traveled and worked for the past 22 hours straight, and we receive a text that says, "Welcome. Please drop your bags in your room and freshen up and be in the lobby within the hour for a full day of scouting." Mind you, the executive producer and many others had advanced to the location days before and got a full night's sleep that none of us had. Yet, even though
First of all, if you are a travelista like I am, you're asking me to do what? And I just landed? Excuse me? And mind you, yes, this is a work trip, but you already know what traveling can do to you. And now you're traveling 22 hours, the jet lag of it all. And now you got to be out all day scouting. What?
we had just finished a 22-hour workday, we were expected to begin another workday without a wink of sleep. That is unacceptable and I'm pretty sure highly illegal. But on these trips, because there isn't much of a network presence, the entire cast, crew, and production team is at the mercy of one showrunner. And some of these showrunners are wilding out on these trips. The number of times I've consoled a crying segment producer in a foreign country.
I just want him to name him. Name him. Who? Who or where? Eric Fuller? No.
Because they couldn't find a pretty enough basket weaving biscuit shop that would meet the incredibly unreasonable expectations of the executive producer. Now, this job is not that serious, so nobody should be driven to the point of tears working on a show about screaming ladies in fancy places. Also, stop overexerting your crews. The camera and audio teams on these shows bust their asses following these cast members around, all while carrying extremely heavy equipment. So every measure should be taken to ensure that they are well taken care of. But unfortunately, there is this culture of content is king on these shows, meaning that nothing is more important than what will appear on the screen. Well, I'm sorry, but I think the health and wellness of human beings should be king. I can't tell you how many times I've popped.
This is also another reason why we're talking about this. Just the other day, Leah McSweeney is also suing Bravo and she has some damning accusations. Recently, a judge says that she could move forward with her lawsuit with the accusations of her accusing the network and production of not respecting her issues with alcohol and not making it available to her services that would help provide her with support. Now we have a producer speaking out. We heard during the reality TV reckoning that there were people from crew that were speaking to the attorneys that were covering the reality TV reckoning. They never became public. This is the first time that I believe, yes, there have been producers that have talked in podcasts and things like that. But since the reality TV reckoning, I think this is like one of the first time we're seeing a former producer that has produced on Real Housewives of Atlanta, Potomac, Vanderpump Rules, recently on Orange County and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills recent season. He was in St. Lucia for their recent trip.
In the video village to be like, hey, B crew was supposed to break for lunch 30 minutes ago. And it met with, we're in the middle of our scene. We'll break them when we can. All while this guy's like sipping on a Diet Coke and eating a cheese plate without even consulting the people that are holding the heavy cameras and audio bags that are making this show possible. It is a maniacal abuse of power and it needs to come to an end immediately. I also want to specifically mention the loggers because these people are some of the most overworked and underpaid people in the entertainment industry. These are the people who are transcribing the scene work so they can write a summary to send to the network to read what happened for the day. They're expected to be.
That's important to note because I always mention to you, Andy Cohen gets notes on what's been playing out during the season. Well, these are the people that are doing it. These loggers are the ones that are documenting everything that's playing out. They're working long hours, as Patrick McDonald just said. And this information is sent to people like Andy Cohen.
Detailed and accurate. Now, first of all, the logger position should be an associate producer position across the board. A lot of these shows will call them loggers so they can pay them less for doing the same job as an associate producer. But these people work so hard and they deserve that AP title. The loggers have to work their full 12 plus hour day and then they have to go home and write a summary, which can take hours, especially on the cast trips when we're shooting all day. That is a lot of writing. So these loggers go back to their rooms and are sometimes up until 4 a.m. and then have to be ready to work again at 8 a.m. By the second day of the trip, they are zombies. And the worst part is that they often aren't even paid for all the extra hours that they spend writing. Can't tell you how many times a logger has complained to me that production.
The amount, shout out to all the HR folks in the chat. What? People are working all kinds of hours. I saw someone just mention they should go on strike. He mentions that they're not unionized. If they go on strike, I mean, they could, but what's going to happen? They're going to be replaced with someone else that's going to be willing to do it, unfortunately. Wow. All right. Let me continue this.
Across the board. A lot of these shows will call them loggers so they can pay them less for doing the same job as an associate producer, but these people work so hard and they deserve that AP title. The loggers have to work their full 12-plus hour day, and then they have to go home and write a summary, which can take hours, especially on the cast trips when we're shooting all day. That is a lot of writing. So these loggers go back to their rooms and are sometimes up until 4 a.m. and then have to be ready to work again at 8 a.m. By the second day of the trip, they are zombies. And the worst part is that they often aren't even paid for all the extra hours that they spend writing. Can't tell you how many times a logger has complained to me that production denied their overtime requests because they didn't request it in advance. Now, how can you request something in advance when you don't know how long it's going to take you to write something? The entire hot sheet system needs to be overhauled and streamlined because as it stands, it's completely broken. I would encourage Bravo to reach out to every logger and AP on the most current seasons of all the shows and ask them if their hours worked accurately were reflected in the hours that they were paid for, because I can guarantee you that in a lot of cases, they were not. Because these shows are produced in the field by a production company and not the network, there is rarely a network presence on set, if at all. There's occasionally a network exec on cast trips, but they usually pop in for a day or two and sit at Video Village watching the monitors. They're not involved with production logistics. I would encourage Bravo to send an HR representative to location for the entire duration of these cast trips.
That's the most shocking part to me. Because remember, Patrick McDonald is a former Bravo producer in the last 5 years. So he was a producer during the scandal of it all. He was a producer during the reality TV reckoning. So you're telling me an HR person doesn't go on these cast trips after everything that's happened with Bravo? I would have an HR person there at all times. I get it. HR works for the corporation. They're always looking out for them. But at least you would feel as if, okay, there's someone there that's making an effort. You know what I mean? Kirby, hold on. Kirby says, Kirby writes, Kempire, I'm in the industry on the cast side, and he's not lying. I'm in union, and it's damn near the same. I'm driving, but I want to call in. We have dropped the call-in link, and we're going to drop the call-in for the live chat in just a second, guys. Be sure to like the video if you haven't already. We are breaking down a video that Patrick McDonald, a former Bravo producer, that is revealing just some of the alleged terrible things that are happening behind the scenes to the crew. He's also saying that he believes that he was not asked back after it was revealed that he was producing OF content, that is adult content on these different websites. Okay? All right. Let's continue. We're almost done.
To ensure that the cast and the crew are being treated fairly, professionally, and given their adequate breaks and rest time between shoot days. Another thing I'd like to see change is let's stop telling cast members how to feel. And there were so many times on my last few seasons where I'd arrive to a scene and the housewife would tell me, now I know I'm supposed to feel appreciative to her about this, but I just really don't. I'm like, who told you you're supposed to feel that way? The executive producer. It is such a disservice, not only to the cast member, but also to the producer who's trying to produce an authentic scene for reality television. And also it just makes for bad TV. It's clunky, bad producing. A good producer will arrive to a scene, talk to their cast member, and find out how they feel. If the cast member doesn't know, a great producer will talk it through with them and help them figure out how they feel. A bad producer will just tell them how to feel. Several housewives on my last few seasons have been complaining that they've never been told how to feel so much. Because here's what happens. Say the producer convinces the cast member to say they feel that way.
Pause. Did he just say that the producers are telling housewives how to feel? Well, I also hear, and we've been hearing this for years, they're also feeding them lines, things that you're hearing in confessionals during the reality TV reckoning. People were told to go at certain people. We've heard these things. We've even heard that with Married to Medicine. I think it was Mariah Huck that said that Simone was told to put the nail in her coffin. Just saying. All right.
So they do it. A day or so later, the cast member gets upset in a scene, and then their true feelings come out. And now they look crazy, and the audience is left thinking, wow, what a flip-flopper. What the hell? Well, that's the producer's fault, and the cast member is left to eat it. So if you're a housewife or a cast member on one of these shows and a producer comes in strongly pressuring you to feel a certain way, just know that that producer is producing you with an agenda, and they probably don't have your best interest at heart. Always go with your gut and stay true to your own feelings, because you can always stand on your truth, or else it'll come back to bite you, which I have seen happen on multiple shows. These people are compelling enough on their own. We don't need to be telling them how to feel. It's ruining the show, so stop doing it. I'd also like to say that there are so many wonderful, hardworking people that make these shows. Many of the producers, cast, crew members have become dear friends of mine over the years. I've talked to several of them since being iced out, and not one of them has told me that me making adult content made them uncomfortable. But you know what many of them have told me makes them uncomfortable? Holding a camera or an audio bag for 4 hours straight in the tropical heat without a break. That makes them uncomfortable. While there were many things that I loved about my time with Bravo, it was no longer a place for me because it wasn't conducive to a happy life. I'm no longer living to work.
Ain't that a word? No longer living to work. Thank you, Patrick McDonald, for sharing your story. And thank you to those of you that tagged me in the video, because literally I was trying to have dinner. And this is why I shouldn't be checking my phone while I'm having dinner, but it's fine. Here we are. Because this story is bigger, and this is something that we've been talking about when it comes to the reality TV reckoning, when it comes to how reality TV is produced, where everyone is reacting to the Garcelle of it all, and how this mean girl behavior that we're watching on this show is triggering to people that are watching it. Some of you have called in and shared those thoughts as well already today. If you are a member of the channel, I've already dropped the call link for you guys to weigh in on what former Bravo producer, Patrick McDonald, who's been a part of Vanderpump Rules, Real Housewives of Atlanta, Real Housewives of Potomac, Married to Medicine, countless different reality TV shows, is speaking out saying that he feels as if he was not asked back to work. He just was working on the latest season of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. He was not asked back to work because of his work outside of Bravo on different OF accounts and things like that. He's also saying and exposing alleged abuses that the crew has had to deal with in the last 5 years of him working on 13 different seasons of Bravo's reality TV shows. Okay. All right. Was there anything else that I wanted to share? Let me just say, just to double check my notes. No. Okay. If there's a part 2, stay tuned. If you're not already subscribed and not following us, shout out to everyone watching on TikTok, those of you watching on Twitch and Twitter. Make sure you're following us on YouTube as well. Again, because TikTok, April 5th, I don't know what's happening with TikTok. Make sure you're following us. It's important to follow us everywhere, because you never know, because, YouTube ain't that reliable either. So make sure you follow us. Shout out to everyone watching on Facebook as well. And of course, shout out to our King's Guards that are holding us down and moderating these conversations in the live chats. Let me say thank you. Dr. Bonji, thank you so much for the super chat. Dr. Bonji says, Denise, her daughters, Larsa, all have OF channels. Why is he any different? I think, if I'm speaking on what the thinking over at Bravo or the network allegedly could be, he's just a producer. Their talent, it brings attention to our shows. That's what I'm speculating. I don't know that for fact. Why is he any different? Couldn't there be more to the story? And I don't care for Bravo right now. There's always more to the story. And this is why we always say this is what he is claiming in regards to his experience. Joe, thank you so much for being a member for the super chat. Joe says, should I subscribe to his account? Okay, Joe, there is a reason why. Please do not use your super chats, guys, if you're not sure if it violates our terms of service here on the channel. I appreciate the super chat, but please don't do stuff like that. Because your super chat of $5 is not going to equate for what it could mean for my channel. Please respect the channel. I know you didn't mean that, but please understand that. All right. I love Compiece. Thank you so much for being a member for the super chat. Bravo with a morality clause, laughable. I don't know if they do have one. I mean, there are different things, but again, if that was true, there are other talents that have OF accounts. Thank you so much, Love Compiece, for the super chat. I saved this comment. Lee says, I think the crew should do a strike. Without them, there is no show. It's important to note that these crews are more than not unionized. Speaking of unions, Danny says, I'm in a non-union position on the crew side. Producers get away with so much. And this is all still happening after Bravo made some changes to their policies and procedures, and they sent it out to all the production companies. Okay? But we haven't heard anything in regards to the reality TV wrecking. I haven't even heard Bethany talk about it. Why did she stop talking about it? Thanks for tuning in to Kempire here on the Kempire Radio podcast. As always, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And for everything Kempire Radio, head on over to KempireRadio.com.